There was a time when Jimmer Fredette owned an entire college basketball season and briefly became one of the most famous faces on the planet. Because, if you don't remember, in 2011, Jimmer briefly had us in awe with his 40-foot jumpers, his insane buzzer beaters, and his ability to fill up the stat sheet despite the fact that he was just 6'2" and looked more like a golfer than a future NBA lottery pick. And as this hype grew, as Jimmer racked up college awards while leading his team to the Sweet 16, things began to get out of hand. Suddenly, the national phenomenon that was Jimmer was seen not only as a dominant college player, but maybe, just maybe, scouts began to believe we were watching the next Steph Curry. Now, obviously, that did not happen. However, after failing out of the NBA, Jimmer has still made headlines the last 3 years because of the ridiculous numbers he has put up in China. It is because of these numbers that the question has to be asked. Why did Jimmer fail in the NBA? And also, can a man who's put up 75 points in a recent professional basketball game come back and make a real contribution in the NBA? So what's up guys, Mike here, and yes, that is the topic for today's video. We are going to be looking at Jimmer Fredette. And really, there's nothing else I have to say here, so let's just jump into the video. Now, before we look at Jimmer's time in China, and before we can figure out whether or not he has a real chance to return to the league, let's briefly go over why scouts thought that Jimmer might be the next Steph Curry. Because the thing is, even when he was in high school, Jimmer was just different. Yes, like almost every future NBA player, Fredette dominated high school basketball, but for him, that wasn't enough. He needed tougher competition, and so as soon as he was 18, he joined his older brother TJ and played pickup basketball games at the local jail with the inmates. These games would give Jimmer a toughness that was rarely seen in a player that young. And as Fredette remembers, quote, "It was a little intimidating at first, seeing all these inmates watching you from the stands, but it was a great experience. It made you mentally tough." This toughness would prove to be extremely valuable for Jimmer during his rise as a college basketball star. Now, if you forget the exact details here, let me give you a brief reminder. It was during his junior year that the Jimmer hype train really began to take off, as in a late December game against Arizona, Fredette made national headlines when he scored 49 points in a blowout against the Wildcats. It was that game that put Jimmer on the map, but really it was his senior season when things began to get crazy. And before we continue guys, I'm happy to say that this video is sponsored by SeatGeek. Now, SeatGeek is an app that takes all of the best ticket prices from around the internet and puts them all in one place for you to get the best deal. It's also very easy to see what the best deals are because SeatGeek scores every single ticket on a scale from 0 to 100 based on how good that ticket's price is. Another awesome part about SeatGeek is that when you're choosing your ticket, you can actually preview the seat that you're looking to buy, which is sick because it's like you're previewing the experience you're going to have. So if you want the best tickets for the best prices, download SeatGeek right now and use the promo code 2KMike for $20 off your first purchase. Also, link will be in the description, and now back to the video. Again, we can point to one specific game here, as on January 26th, number 9 BYU would take on the 4th ranked team in the nation, a 20-0 San Diego State team led by none other than Kawhi Leonard. And on national television, Jimmer would reach the peak of his basketball career as he dropped 43 points and handed San Diego State their first loss of the season. It was at this point that Fredette truly became a household name. Everyone was talking about him, and Kevin Durant actually tweeted, "Jimmer Fredette is the best scorer in the world." By the end of the season, KD was not the only one hyping up Jimmer, as President Barack Obama was also sold, telling the world, quote, "He is unbelievable. Best scorer, obviously, in the country." Endorsements like this, of course, put tremendous pressure on Jimmer, but he wasn't fazed. He was mentally tough. By the end of his senior season, Jimmer would lead BYU to their first Sweet 16 appearance in 30 years, and for the season, he would average 29 points per game and was the consensus National Player of the Year. Again, it was at this point that the Jimmer hype had gotten out of hand, as some people seriously argued that Fredette was the next Steph Curry. This led to Jimmer getting drafted way too early, and it is also a huge reason as to why he is seen as a massive bust. However, with that in mind, the man still believed in himself, and he knew that he had the talent to play at a high level, but to make it back into the NBA, Jimmer would need to both improve his game and regain his confidence, which meant, of course, that Jimmer would make the decision to sign with the Shanghai Sharks, a team that would allow him to hopefully grow as a basketball player while he was also given enough freedom on offense to get his confidence back. This decision would pay off big time, because while in the NBA, Jimmer's flaws overshadowed his scoring ability. But in China, things were very, very different. With the Sharks, Jimmer's coach put the ball in his hands and let him run the offense, which led to immediate and somewhat ridiculous results. In the first game of the season, Jimmer would drop 42 points in a Shanghai win that would prove to be just the start of a monster season. It seemed like every single game, Jimmer would drop 40 or 50 points, and because of this, he immediately went from fan favorite to a legitimate celebrity in China. His year one peak would come when he made national news after he dropped 73 points and made 10 threes in a single game. This briefly put him back in the NBA spotlight, but wasn't enough to gain him serious free agent consideration. Still though, these types of performances had rebuilt Jimmer's confidence, and he would finish his first season in China averaging 37.6 points, 8.2 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.6 steals, and he was named the CBA MVP. And just looking at those ridiculous numbers, as you could expect, there was some NBA interest in Jimmer after his first season in China. Several NBA teams did offer him 10-day contracts near the end of the season. However, a 10-day contract is hardly a guarantee, and as Jimmer put it, quote, "Obviously, I'm from the USA, and the NBA is the greatest league in the world. And if I have the opportunity to play in the NBA, that's where I would love to play. But China is a great opportunity. It's a good league over there." This is the reason that after year one, Jimmer remained in China, and it's a good thing he did because his year two stats were even more insane. As he grew more comfortable practically playing as a god amongst men, Jimmer would finish his second season with averages of 36.9 points, 6.9 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 2 steals a game. This season would also again bring him national headlines, and this time these headlines were due to some drama. Because in a game against former NBA All-Star and Chinese basketball legend Stephon Marbury, Jimmer would torch Marbury, dominating the game with 54 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists while leading his team to a 4-point win. This was obviously impressive. However, it was not these stats that put him in the spotlight, because in the third quarter of this game, Jimmer would go up for a layup, but had the ball stolen from him by Marbury. This steal would frustrate Jimmer as he thought he was fouled, and so he shoved Stephon, and immediately a fight broke out. Obviously, this fight would end quickly, but national headlines still would be made largely based on Stephon Marbury's words and performance. Because in the post-game press conference, Marbury was quoted as saying he forgot what an NBA steal felt like. That's how we played in '96 and for sure in Coney Island, which was a statement that sounded great until you took into account that Stephon finished the game with 4 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Compare those numbers with Jimmer's 50-point triple-double, and as you can see, at this point, Jimmer had clearly established himself as a much better basketball player than Stephon, and to this day, now in his third season in China, Jimmer is averaging 37.9 points, 5.6 rebounds, 6.1 assists, and a crazy 3.5 steals a game. So now we come to the question: why did Jimmer fail in the NBA? Well, to start things off here, let's go back to the 2011 draft, because in this draft, one of the main reasons the Kings took Jimmer was their head coach, Paul Westphal. Paul Westphal was someone who believed in Jimmer. He believed that he'd be able to play at a high level in the NBA, and we can see this in a quote from Westphal where he says, "We think he'll fit in really well with our roster. I hesitate to say until we get out there and get after it, but I think of him as a point guard. He plays the pick and roll really well, he's a good passer, obviously a great shooter. We will get back to that point guard remark eventually, but for now, let's continue into Jimmer's rookie season, and because of Westfall's belief in Jimmer, Fredette did get significant playing time in the beginning of his Sacramento career. However, just 7 games into his rookie season, Westfall was fired. The Kings' new coach, Mike Malone, did not have the same belief in Jimmer, and that soon became apparent as by around the middle of the season, Jimmer's playing time drastically decreased, as embarrassingly for him, the 60th pick in the draft, Isaiah Thomas, earned a starting spot over him. Now, we obviously know now that Isaiah Thomas clearly should have been drafted higher, but that doesn't change the fact that a second-round pick starting over Jimmer at this point was very significant. Teams try their best to give every opportunity to their lottery picks to get playing time because front offices don't want to look like they picked a bust. However, this was not the case for Jimmer, as it was obvious that the Kings had pretty much given up on him early on. Fredette would play in just 2 full seasons before he was bought out by Sacramento in the middle of his 3rd year, ironically just 15 days after he would score a career-high 24 points against the Knicks. From there, Jimmer would bounce around and play on several different teams before finally ending up in the D-League, where he was an all-star but no longer had any serious interest from NBA teams. And the thing is, teams had some great reasons to not be interested in Jimmer at this point. The reasons that Jimmer failed in the NBA are numerous. He was too short, he was not a true point guard, he couldn't play any defense at all, etc. We all know those reasons, but the biggest reason that Jimmer failed in the NBA was that he simply needed an offense to revolve around him to succeed. Just listen to these words from an unnamed assistant coach that coached Jimmer in the NBA. Quote, "Jimmer thinks everybody is stupid. He thinks everybody needs to come and just turn over their offense and let him shoot it anytime he wants. That's not how the league works." Yikes. That is a pretty deflating statement to hear if you have any hopes of Jimmer returning to the NBA, and at this point, I'm not sure that I do. As we've said in this video already, Jimmer seems very happy in China, and just think about that quote again. Jimmer thinks teams are stupid because they aren't completely basing their offense around him. If that was the case a few years ago, well, what does that mean Jimmer would think now? For the last 3 years, he's been playing in China, where the ball has been in his hands more than ever before. He's allowed to shoot from anywhere, he's allowed to do really whatever he wants. I'm not entirely convinced, to say the least, that Jimmer could go from a superstar in China to just a role player in the NBA. I don't know if he has that in his mental makeup. I don't know if he wants that. Maybe at the end of the day, he's just okay with averaging 40 points per game in China, and that's the last we're gonna hear from Jimmer, at least in terms of playing in the NBA. For now, that wraps up today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun to make, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe for more NBA videos like this. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much for supporting. You're the man, we all know it, and as always, have an awesome day, and cue that music. By the way, if you're still here while the music is cued, here are 2 videos I think you are going to love watching. All you have to do is just click on either one of them on the screen right here, and other than that, guys, again, have a great day, and peace.